All right, let's dive in and let's kick this thing off. So, for those of you who don't know us, I'm Shawn. I run go to market and early product for early stage ventures, primarily in AI and B2B. I actually have a background in computer science. My first startup was I created a machine learning algorithm for the Twitter social graph to do friend recommendations back in 2007, back before that was a thing, back when it was called Twitter. Those were the glory days. I remember that with fondness. So I've been in the machine learning space and what we now call the AI space with generative AI for almost 20 years now, paying attention to that. And so I'm loving what is happening now and trying to focus on building out solutions that actually work for businesses and can be implemented and deliver returns. Because there's a lot of fun stuff out there, but it's really hard to keep track of. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Barry, why don't
Yeah.
you?
Well, I'm Barry Hurd. I am on the technical data end of the spectrum. I'm a chief digital officer and do a lot of fractional work involved with somewhere between 7 and 20 different AI data startups at this point, ranging from advisory slash consultant to investor. So I've been very heavily in this data category for at least a decade, touching big projects. And before that, something that really overlaps this topic for deep research is I've been an intelligence guy for my entire career and my entire family upbringing. So I have one of those odd origin stories that I've been looking at digital details of how things connect for my entire life. And this whole deep research topic and trend is one that really hits my sweet spot. So glad to have everybody here.
Awesome. And then also, today's workshop is brought to you by Promptimize. So, for those of you who don't know, Promptimize is awesome. It's Grammarly, but for AI prompts. It's a Chrome extension that installs in your browser. So, when you go to ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity, there's a little extra blue button that appears. And so, if you just type in stream of consciousness, you just say, here's what I want to search, and you hit that little blue icon, it will automatically optimize your prompt. It's like a little mini prompt engineer sitting in your browser. It can also save your prompts so you can easily reuse really great prompts that you've invested energy in. Or if you attend a workshop like this and you really want one of the prompts and you want to save it, it's got a prompt library, has a bunch of variables as well, so you can reuse them across. So for those of you who hold multiple roles or you're a consultant working with multiple clients, you can save variables for different brands, as an example, different brand voice and those kinds of things, and easily call them out. If you haven't given it a try yet, give it a go. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about it. We're happy to answer any questions. But with that, let's dive on in to the meat of this session. What we are focused on today is deep research. And so, for those of you who aren't aware of it, deep research is a product offering from pretty much every major LLM platform at this point, where it's enabling internet access and it's enabling a bunch of thinking time. So you'll ask a question, and at the most basic level, it will deconstruct your question. It'll go do a bunch of searches across hundreds of websites for the different parts of your questions. And then it will synthesize all that data into a report. And that can be a really simple report, or that can be an extremely complicated report that is hundreds of pages long. And it all depends on how you prompt it and what value you get out of it. Now, like I said, pretty much all the platforms at this point offer it. Gemini was really the first major platform to offer it, and they recently did a big upgrade to it with the Gemini 2.5. Perplexity offers it, and that's one that I use a million times a day. And OpenAI also offers it with their deep research product, which is very deep. Grok also offers it. Nobody uses Grok except to make memes. We're not going to go deep on that one today. And then there's also a whole bunch of other smaller third-party deep research type of products as well. They're endlessly popping up with different focuses and that sort of thing. But what's really powerful about these is anybody can have a market researcher at their fingertips now. And most of these they don't respond instantly. It can take a couple minutes. It can take 10 minutes. It can take 20 minutes, depending on how deep it goes. So it's not for quick one-off searches of what am I going to have for lunch. It's something that you want it to go look more deeply. You want it to consider its answer. So if you're a CEO And you're trying to decide, do I want to acquire this company? Do I want to activate this marketing campaign? You can ask a bunch of questions to do some deeper discovery into the market and have it return to you like a junior employee doing legwork and research. It's really powerful. It's also super powerful on the education side. Something in this current environment, it's all moving so rapidly, it's impossible to keep up with all of it. And so you have to constantly be learning and trying to digest what are these new things, these new techniques. And deep research makes it so much more digestible because you can ask it to go and give me a comprehensive entry overview of this topic. And it can be a really technical topic, and it will give you the for dummies version of it, which is great. It allows you to onboard to all sorts of topics without having to bother anybody. And so you get smarter much more rapidly. And that's, I think, really powerful. So that's why we're going deep on this. We might have even some follow-up workshops on this because you can go so very deep into this. And but we're gonna cover the intro stuff today. Barry's got some really great examples here that kind of get more deep with each example. Barry, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, and thanks, Shawn. I mean, for the most part, I'll set some guardrails to the conversation. What we're going to cover today is basically using these three different sort of consumer level. There's a UI, there's a prompt. We're not covering any of the ones where you have to use APIs or different clouds. There's a lot of no-code tools. That'll be like the 201 or 401 type of scenario, and we'll cover that in a future webinar.
And
The
as we're going into this too, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
Barry. I actually love interrupting you, throw you off your
I
game,
know.
test you, see if you're paying attention. But as we're going, please put questions in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it and save those. I'll answer as many as I can. We will have 20 to 30 minutes at the end for open Q&A as well. So think of your questions, post them in the chat. We'll go through as many. We really want to make this as useful for all of you as possible. We want to make sure it applies to your day to day. Please feel free to reach out in that chat.
Yeah, one of the areas I want to address that Shawn briefly touched on was basically availability of these different tools. Gemini from Google, OpenAI, and Perplexity. One of the big limiters here is some people have free access to a free deep research on ChatGPT. Others have Google Workspace. Some got a free license to Perplexity because they were pro users on LinkedIn. And so, based upon that and the dollar volume, I chose to use the examples in this presentation are mostly going to be using Google Gemini, but the prompts and the structures that I'll be talking through and sharing later on, they work on all three. They work in slightly different manners. And the reason I chose Google is because for the most part, Google is the cheapest service out there. But for approximately 20 bucks a month, you more or less get unlimited access to the deep research tool from Gemini. If you have a paid account on OpenAI and ChatGPT, you get a 10 to 15 a month just in volume off their deep research tool, unless you upgrade to their premium service for 200 or so a month. And Perplexity also has a fairly affordable plan where you get a lot of access to it. But in my general practice, the Perplexity one has the shortest and most precise answers. So even though you have more or less unlimited use of their deep research tool, since it's the lowest bar of deep research, I rank Gemini a little bit higher than that. So we're sticking with that. Again, if any of the prompts that we talk through you have questions about, either ask it in the chat window or shoot us a quick contact message on email. So why are we all here? We're all here because we want to develop this thing that I refer to as super intelligence. This is probably one of the most underrated topics of why deep research can change the game across everything. And too many businesses and professionals are just simply ignoring the fact that one or two people on a team can develop a handful of prompts with these tools, and they can radically upskill everybody on their team and everybody at the organization, unlike all of the other categories of prompting. So pretty much every job on the planet requires you have access to the best information possible. And so, unless you're just doing a strict manual task, I would recommend everybody to really think about how do you apply this word super intelligence, how do you upskill somebody to have a 10x or 100x access to information, and assign somebody, take the concept of a chief innovation officer and don't make it about tech anymore. Like literally make it about the information of what is available and how fast people can get it. And if you don't have a team that is willing to do this themselves, highlight somebody, raise your hand, and make sure that every question that they have, you can give them the best information in 5 minutes. So with that, I'm going to go through this and I'm going to basically go through it and show you a basic prompt. And then I'm going to show you the example of what that prompt does. And I'll walk you through 3 or 4 examples. And at the end of that, we can have some open conversations about how they overlap and stack on top of each other. As we go into the examples, all of these examples are basically going to build upon 3 basic stacks of what I call the forks in the road. You've got topic variations. So when you're writing up a research prompt, you got to pay real attention to what that primary topic, the phrase that you use to describe what you're trying to research. Going 1 or 2 layers off or using an S, if you know anything about SEO and keyword research, really give the topic a lot of thought when you're doing this research, because when you ask that one word, if I do tennis shoes as my topic as opposed to Nike, or if I do athletic running shoes, that very minute change will radically affect the type of research and the information that comes out of it. And if you're not sure exactly what phrase you're going to do, I always recommend writing those down in a quick brainstorm session and then doing multiple versions of it and comparing the differences, because you'll see the radical differences that you get in your results. The second one is around the persona and the audience. Just like topics, if you've got 3 to 10 different personas and audiences that you're working with, think about them not only from a skill set and an occupation, but from an expertise level, whether they're just beginning a entry on an awareness, maybe they're in the sales funnel and you need that educational component and they don't know anything about what you do, versus a subject matter expert. If you think again that you're going to be touching 2 or 3 people, maybe some of your audience is beginners and some of them are more advanced, define those right out of the gate on your napkin math scenario and get ready to do the same exact research prompt, but with the different persona based upon their occupation and their level of expertise or knowledge of what you're talking about. And then the third one is really about the foundational data. And that's the last one, because the foundational data is everything that you're going to provide to your research question and set up the basic automation as it goes onto the web and looks for information. So when you go to foundational data and it's your first time around, if you're researching Nike and you don't know anything about Nike, these tools are going to go out and they're going to find the raw Google information and they're going to do a basic search and they're going to collect that information themselves. But if you have foundational data that maybe it's their stock analysis, maybe it's press releases, if you already have something assembled, your foundational data will cycle back over and over again. So the first time you do it, you don't know anything about Nike. It's going to give you very 101 level deep research. As soon as you have that deep research done, now you know quite a bit about Nike. Your foundational data can go back to step 1 and you can do the same prompt, but feed it the foundational data at a different level. And as many times as you want to rinse and repeat that, I find that I will go through that cycle somewhere between 5 and 20 times to get the best result. You'll eventually hit a point where you're cycling the same research question over and over again, that you will see that it gives you the same result. And then you can stop when you get 2 results in a row that are very similar to each other. And that's where you cap out and you've dug as deep as the system will allow you to. So hopefully that makes sense from a quick perspective. And I'm going to jump into an example now and let you see how this actually functions. So the first immediate prompt is going to be a very simple structure. And this is just an example of, I want to do something where I'm going into a category for the first time. I don't know a lot about it. So I need to form the foundation of my research. And this is one of the best opening ones that you can do is where you just do I'm planning to study this topic and find out what methodologies and models are commonly used in that field. And when you use this, the research modules are effectively going to go do a deep dive on the category for you, and it's going to give you all the models and methodologies that when you read through it and you move to that foundational data step where you're going to cycle it back, this is going to allow you to do a deep dive on a category, choose the model or methodology that makes the most sense to your use case, and then tell the research system on that second revision that that's the preferred model. Like that's where you want to dig into because maybe you're a marketer. Obviously, you want to have some sort of funnel question. Maybe you're a product development person. You want to use the product model, but you'll see based on the industry what the preferred models and methodologies are. And depending on your category and the industry that you're looking into, you don't necessarily know which models are most commonly used. So I took this and I decided to run that prompt using Google Gemini on basically influencer marketing. And I wanted to understand what is the category of influencer marketing and how do influencers get ranked? And I chose this one because I thought a lot of people on this webinar probably touch influencer marketing away and they might not know exactly how it works and how it's all ranked and scored. And by doing this, you basically get a crash course on the entire category. And I'm going to jump over to what the crash course on influencer marketing actually looks like. And by doing this structure, it immediately gave me the introduction, the methodologies that I can immediately see what objectives and category breakdowns that different companies and different industries use for influencer marketing. It gives me a nice bullet list of the common influencer marketing models and the campaign types, the KPIs that are commonly used in influencer marketing. If you haven't done this before, or if you're going to launch a campaign, this is probably a great 101 dummies guide to influencer marketing. And then it gives a comparative breakdown of strengths and weaknesses, along with best practices, conclusions and recommendations, and then the best part, which is the works cited. So in approximately 4.5 minutes in this case, I ended up with a 40 plus documents getting researched. It produced a 20-page document. It broke it down into an intro guide that if this is your starting point for any deep research project, this can be one of your first sort of introductory pass to preparing for your next deep research. So I would typically recommend that people use this sort of prompt to do the methods and models deep research, collect it, publish it into a document. Once it's published into a document, by that, publish it to a Google Doc or a PDF so that it's accessible. Then when you're using any of the other tools, whether it's Perplexity, OpenAI, or Google, you can reference that document specifically in your next stage of deep research. Does that make sense? Shawn, any input that you want to throw out there? So you don't have to interrupt. I just asked the question.
You took all the fun of interrupting you, though. That's half the fun. No, but I think this concept of layering in, you're doing a report and you're referencing the report. This goes right back to the workshop that we last hosted, which is moving from the one-off prompt to chaining them together. This is a theme that is going to recur over and over again. And a lot of what we're talking about is there's a lot of magic that happens when you just start chaining these together and building a workflow. And that's where a lot of the people who try one of these tools and they're like, it's okay, but it's not magical. Like it's not going to replace anybody. It's once you start these multi-step processes where you start to realize, oh wow, yeah, no, I did just do a full day of work in 20 minutes. And so that's the only thing that I would highlight there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's all about, it's not doing a one-off process. It's about how collecting enough Legos that you can make your castle. And by understanding how those Legos plug together, you can build some amazing things. And just because somebody asked in the chat window, all of these examples and prompts, they'll be shared in the document. And also, you can see at the bottom of this slide that is on screen right now, all of the actual product examples or the report examples are also viewable. So the second example that we're going to take a look at is probably one of the other foundational ones that I use all the time, which is preparing a common English example and explanation for the lowest level of the audience. And this is a great prompt because once you've done the models and methodologies prompt, you can take that as an example, or you can start an entirely new topic and dumb it down, whether it's for yourself or it's for somebody else. But by lowering the bar to a common English, you immediately get to understand it at the lowest layman level. And that helps with marketing, that helps with sales, it helps with the executives, whoever your audience is. If you lower it to the most and lowest common denominator, then you can communicate very easily on it. And if you use this and you change a couple words in it, you can actually create the much more advanced model. So whether it's you want to change the audience for an executive roundtable, or if you want to change it from common English to rocket science, with one or two tweaks, you can make this prompt very simplistically oriented towards a more advanced crowd. To give you a great example of one of my hobbies that I play around with quite a bit as a tech guy, I went and used an example for doing this for 3D resin printing. It is cool, and anybody who argues with otherwise needs to buy one of these and play around with it. So when you're thinking about something as complex as 3D printing, dumbing it down for somebody who has only maybe seen it in the news or heard about it is a really critical step. They don't understand all the complexities. And again, should be your starting point for a lot of your other deep research, is that lowest, how do I communicate it to the mass? I'm going to stop there for a second and also highlight when you're putting in prompts, and I highlighted the variables that I changed in this prompt. Those variables are something that when you go through and you think about your personas, you think about the topics that you're trying to educate somebody on, keep those in a list. If you use a tool like Promptimize or a library tool, that's the type of field or a variable that tools like Promptimize can help collect those data lists, so that when you're working with a prompt like this, you can just drag and drop them into your system. And then you can do that at scale. For me, I create an Excel and a Google Doc so that I can track all those variables. And I personally, as a professional, I rank all of those. So when I see a superior report getting generated, and I've generated thousands of these reports, when I'm using those one or two variables, I know whether that produces a 5-star report or if it produces a report that I just want to hit the delete button on. So to give you an example of what this type of model or question gives out for a 3D printing on a beginner's guide, let's click over to the example of that. Again, it really, just by that simple phrasing, this will consistently put out a full intro within the first page of the document, which covers, what is it exactly in very simple descriptions, how does it work, the core elements of resin printing. The resin is the material that goes in the printer. There's In the past couple of years, there are hundreds and hundreds of varieties of different liquids that go into these machines. They each have a different attribute and property. There's a whole list of safety equipment. Nobody wants a chemical burn or a bad odor in their house. They have oops and common problems for beginners. Obviously, when you're dealing with something like 3D printing, addressing things like FAQs or common mistakes is a great template to start with. And if you carry this same prompt through on something that's not a 3D printing machine, if you did it for SEO or if you did it for launching a startup, it would produce the same type of common FAQ questions that will help that beginner basically avoid all the pitfalls. Common use cases for this type of prompt in this structure is I always recommend this for new employees. Any topics that you're trying to introduce a new person who doesn't have subject matter expertise on the thing that your company does, do a half dozen deep researches on those topics within your organization or your clients, and you will quickly have an employee onboarding guide that is hundreds of pages, and it becomes the standard operating procedure as well, that all of the basic details of learning the 101 steps of your company that probably most of the team at your organization takes for granted and has not documented properly can be answered by deep research. So this is great for HR. It's great for high growth teams who are bringing people on through Fiverr or remote personnel who don't have a lot of contact. It's really good for bringing on college students. It's also really good for bringing on those same people and asking them to do this type of research because they learn these tools and they also document the resources that they're going to agree with you on. So I'll fly a flag here too, Shawn. Any interruption question?
No, I think to build on what you were saying, one of the I think really useful things here is if you have a team, if you're running a business, whether you're big or small, and you have people on your team that are experts in different areas, it can actually be really powerful to have that expert go and use deep research to make 101 entry level like manuals or onboarding kits, like Barry is saying, but have the expert do it because it allows them to rapidly disseminate that knowledge that they are experts in. Because oftentimes you forget what it's like to be a beginner. And so having them go generate this, it's a great first draft, and they go through it and they're like, oh, yeah, I would have forgot to mention that to somebody because I just assumed they know it. But then they can correct the 5 or 6 things that are maybe slightly off from where they view it. And it forces them to really structure their thinking and revisit the basics and then take it more advanced, make them run the more advanced research reports as well. And suddenly you end up with this like knowledge base that's super valuable for the rest of the team to understand what's going on. And suddenly the marketing team has the knowledge they need to create the content that they need to create thought leadership content. And the product team has everything they need to make decisions. Like it's, you can get really creative with these, and it's extremely high value, high output work.
On a spin too that I'll throw out there, this is probably one of the best hacks for this specific prompt is do it for yourself and simply do a common English explanation describing what it is you do. So as an expert, we probably all hear that. What in the hell do you do? Whether it's talking to somebody in the team or a project, try to use this type of prompt structure specifically on your own skill set, define it, read it, and you will have a 20-page document that you can hand to somebody and say, if you ever want to know what sort of things I do, here is a guide of stuff that I've pre-authorized. Like you've read through it, you've confirmed this is right. If somebody on my 25-person departmental team wants to know exactly it is like what I can help them with, here's the document. It's an amazing way to help team members find skill sets within each other's orgs or outside of the team when they don't have a lot of contact with them. So with those two examples, I'm going to jump into two very specific examples of maximizing the results with audience templates. So this is that second part that I started my conversation out with, that by understanding your persona and your audience and creating a template for it, you can radically alter any of these other prompts. With this process and everybody on the webinar, I will submit and get everybody access to these audience templates for these categories. But effectively what we're talking about here is I need to tell the system as I'm doing the deep research who's the audience and why do they need it and what's the format it needs to go into. And so let's take a look at one of those and look at what that would mean. So this is an example on the left is the actual deep research request that I did for a common English technical explanation of 3D resin printing. On the right is the actual template for a technical deep dive report. And what I'm doing there is I'm showing it the Markdown format, which is the formatting language that basically tells the report what structure it has to be and what items that I want to include in the deep research. And so based upon my common English technical explanation, I could use all varieties of these audience templates and radically change the same research that it's doing. Let's take a look at that. And if anybody has questions about that or wants to customize one of those, let me know. But by doing that type of report, let's see. Actually, I didn't save that one on my laptop. So I might have to jump over to the next report. We'll forward that example over to you in the follow-up. Let's jump to the next one. Here we go. How about competitive intelligence? We'll use the same type of structure for doing a competitive intelligence report. This is a much longer structure, which if you ever go into deep research and ask for company information and say something, do a basic one-liner or two-liner report. In this case, I wanted a competitive research on NVIDIA and I wanted it for the last year. So I was specifically focusing on the dates for the last 12 months from 4/25/24 to 4/25/25 and use this following research format. This is that coding or template format that most people are never going to get into and actually type into a research tool. But by doing this, I will get a much more rich and detailed report about NVIDIA. And what that will look like is something like this, which I will get a executive snapshot. I will get key metrics, products and services in the portfolio, the market position, competitive landscape, which has about 20 different competitors in it, recent developments that are in their PR statements, all on a table, their SWOT report. So I could tell the template to focus on any type of report methodology there. I use SWOT because it's very common for people to read and understand. Regulatory impacts. So normally in a competitive report or a research for a client company, you don't get any type of regulatory impact. But if you write a line into deep research asking for it, you will get that. You can also ask for a forecast scenario. So by just that one simple template, you can ask it for basically a fiscal snapshot and where is this company going to head according to the math. Arguably, the math for most of these AI tools produce a pretty good snapshot and predict company success based off the numbers fairly well. And then it will also give you a different stack ranking because I asked for it of the top sources and reference materials. So you'll note when you're using deep research, a lot of them will provide a list of citations and what sources they went to. Oftentimes it's 20, 50, 150 different items. If you ask the system for a stack ranking in your report, you can get the top 10, the top 15, you can put a criteria on that. And that is critical if you want to read more about that specific report. And it's also critical if you want a specific type of citation highlighted for a specific type of audience member. So when I'm doing a competitive research, I could potentially put in this, I want the top 10 sources for the CEO of my company. And I would get out of 150 documents that it actually used to generate this report, I would get the 10 for my CEO. Critical time saver. I could create that same report in just with one phrase for the audience. I could create 3, 5, 10 different reports for everybody on the team based upon what they need to see that's important. So that's the next step of understanding how do I leverage something like a competitive report and I build upon that so it's more useful for the next person. And that's the easiest is to segment the user and the audience. Same report over and over again, curated and maximized for everybody in your audience, avoiding collecting everybody on your team into one lump sum and then giving them the same report. You can give your CTO one report, you can give your sales guy another report, you can give your client a third report. And suddenly 5 to 10 minutes of deep research and 2 minutes of customization for each person, you have a 35-page document that is actually suited for them. That's they can collaborate on what they need to know that's important and makes sense for them. That's the straightforward snapshot of that. Shawn, any questions there?
Yeah, so one that Ron Carson just asked that I think is worth talking about live is he asked, given that all these tools hallucinate, how does one make sure that this long report from deep research isn't just a bunch of made up info, right? And I think that's a really good question and one that there's several answers to. And I'll let you take a stab, Barry. The first thing I want to throw out there is that because these tools are so easy to use now, there's two really easy answers. One is you can run multiple of these simultaneously and compare the results. That's an easy way to do it. Now, that requires human review time. Like, none of these give you permission to not do due diligence. You have to be aware that they do hallucinate and they also get off track. Sometimes they latch onto a random detail you didn't expect and go down a weird rabbit hole, and like you just had no idea that was going to happen, and so you have to run another one and compare. But the other thing you can do is if you run a deep research report in, say, Gemini, but then give the report to OpenAI o3 and say, please fact check this, please review and fact check this, is it legitimate? It will 99% of the time catch hallucinations. It will find them. Like they're especially if you're using different models for the review process. Sometimes if it's reviewing its own output, it won't find it because its own training data is the problem. But because each of these models is trained on slightly different data and a slightly different architecture, the different models will catch each other's hallucinations a lot of the time. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Barry.
Yeah, so the I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. The way to build that foundational data and the certainty that it's correct is jump down to the bottom of the report. So in this example, I'm just looking at the 10 source list on this competitive intelligence and run a second research report, or you can do this in a regular prompt as well, asking it to critique all of your sources and give you a reason why these sources are invalid or should be questioned. And so that's one step. You can go to the AI and ask that. Or the second one is to read through that list and then run the report again. But the second time, tell it to take preference to the ones that you actually want it to use. So in this case, I'm looking at the NVIDIA competitor review, and the first one is saying it's looking at the Form 10K. I know the Form 10K is a great document to look at, so I can run this same research piece and say, take items 1, 2, 3, and 6, base the entire report off those, eliminate the ones that I think are questionable. If you don't do that as an expert, you have to go the AI route.
Yep.
But whether or not you want to put the 10 to 20 minutes of thought and reading time or knowledge into it.
Yep. Another question too, somebody asked, what benefits would learning and using the Markdown language for engaging with LLMs for research? And this came up in our last workshop too. We always use Markdown in a lot of our prompts. And it's, for those of you that don't know what Markdown is, it's really simple. Like, it doesn't take you long to learn it. You're just marking up the English to show what the formatting is. So one hashtag is an H1. It's a heading. It's like the biggest heading. So I highly recommend anybody take 10 minutes to go learn Markdown because it really doesn't require much more than that. And it enables a whole bunch of use cases, one of which is clearly communicating with the LLM. You tell it, you're literally telling it what is important. What are the important headlines that it should pay attention to? And then two, it enables really easy exporting of all this content. So like you can import Markdown into a Google Doc and it'll automatically apply your templates, which is really great. And it just makes it really simple. So it's not that hard to learn and it does enable some good use cases.
Yeah. Yeah. The real benefit is probably with 10 to 30 minutes of reading about Markdown and just looking at an example like this, most people will grok the concept of the Markdown structure. Shawn said one hashtag is a heading, two hashtags a subheading, three hashtags, and more hashtags are just more indentations on your headings. So heading 1 through heading 10. A table structure, you can see in this example that we're looking at here that just the lines and the dashes, if you ever want to request something in a table structure, it's a fairly straightforward. I want 6 columns. A slash and a dash represent a column, and this is what I want the title to be. Now, if you want your information in tables and columns a lot, and you want control over that, every time you did that, this saves me untold number of hours reformatting information from a paragraph. And then the ones where you have things like an HTML link that are in brackets, where it's a title and a URL mention, telling it that you want categories or different segments with URLs associated to it automatically forces the AI to assign a URL to whatever you attached it to. So if you put company name, comma, URL, it's immediately going to give you the hyperlink for the company. You can do that for the LinkedIn, you can do that for a Facebook account. So when it comes to collecting all those other profiles or all those other resources, just understanding the fact that you can put name of organization, comma, URL, you will get hyperlinks, and that allows you to do secondary work really quick. It allows you to pull all that extra information. So light speed type of scenario is probably 100x time saver for me.
Yep. All right.
Any other questions off the top of the chat?
No, I think we can move on for now, but anybody who does have more questions, please feel free to put them in there.
Yeah. With those examples through the way, I will give the other 10 prompt structures in those markdown formats so you can do executive summaries or investor memos. I've got about 500 different categories broken out, but I'm sharing some of those with everybody on the webinar. And then what I wanted to do on this is also take you out of the deep research tools, because we were talking about Google, OpenAI, and Perplexity. And if you actually do want to do more due diligence or get better citations and apply it to an industry problem, there are a variety of other AI powered research tools that pair up with this deep research. And so these are all the categories that I work with on a fairly consistent basis. And if you need a legal format or if you need a medical format, there are specialized tools that pair up with these deep research systems now that I can actually go into deep research and say, I would like to get the export file for this other specific tool. And then I can use it in medical research, or I can use it in a legal case, and just saving time and making it actionable for everybody with an industry focus.
Yeah. And then I will say, so we obviously don't have time to get into this, and I don't know how interested everybody would be, but there is the next level after this, which is integrating the APIs to do your own custom deep research that's specific for your business. We're spending quite a bit of time recreating a lot of this and being able to specify what are the types of sources that you want to research. How often do you want it updated? And introducing things like a graph database to the results opens up a whole world of possibilities. So being able to actually graph out market research and understand how are all these things connected, what different feature sets do they have and how much do they overlap. For like PE applications, acquisition applications, the amount of research that you can automate is insane. So these get really powerful, marrying together things like Exa search with Perplexity's Sonar API, and then summarizing with O3 from OpenAI. Like you can get really deep and exhaustive and get rid of a lot of the hallucinations by just automating the review process. So a lot of what like Barry was talking about today with, referencing multiple reports together, you can build a system where it's building hundreds of reports, referencing all of those together and mapping it out. And you'll have insights that are normally reserved for people that can afford to hire Deloitte. They're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to get Deloitte to do the same thing over a 6-month process. You could have it by the end of the week. Like that's the era that we're entering into. And I think this is a word of caution, but also like hopefully a spark of inspiration. But if you, as a business person, are not starting to use these tools, you will be at a massive information disadvantage over the coming years because you will be up against people that just understand the market at a much deeper level than you do, or understand the product or whatever your sector is. If you aren't using these and learning how to use them now, this is going to be a massive disadvantage. It's still early. You haven't missed the boat yet, but like I recommend everybody use a couple of these every single day. Just get in the habit of doing it. Replace Google, use these, ask deeper questions, and push it to the limits because that's really the only way to learn these is to just practice, and it will pay dividends. This is as slam dunk as it gets in AI. Use it because it will be useful.
And I would also throw out there too that the exports of these reports, it's all about knowledge sharing and passing this information to somebody else. So like the competitive intelligence, it's labeled competitive intelligence and it tells me all about NVIDIA. If that was a client company, like I would recommend everybody here take the 3 to 5 accounts or the company organizations that you really deal with on a monthly basis and generate a competitive intelligence report about that company. And then clip out the parts that you want to communicate and send that off to the person at that company and saying, this is what we know about your company in the last 30 days. Because a lot of them don't know how to do it. It opens up a huge communication channel of one, you know how to use the tools, but you also know how to use the tools on their behalf to benefit them. And that's a real simple thing to onboard people to the use cases because they're always going to come back and say, how do I use this information? What's the next step? And you can take that one statement, you can stick it right back into the report and say, how do I use this information to answer their questions? And it'll give you can create a 10-step process, send it right back to them. Be like, here's your report, here's how you use it. Next month you'll have a different question. It's not about overloading them, it's about upskilling them and showing that you're a source of knowledge and know how to use the tools to get them the knowledge.
Yep. And if any other questions come up, I just put our Barry's and my LinkedIn links in the chat. Feel free to connect with us and reach out. We will be sharing a recording of this, and we will be sharing the prompts that we were using, like Barry said. And feel free to share that with anybody that you think is useful. Like we said last time, we're here. We're trying to spread the knowledge and be as useful as possible. So we're always happy to geek out about this. Seriously, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to nerd out all day long. And we will be running more of these workshops. So if it's useful, please leave a review. The Luma event will ask what your rating is. And that feedback, we look at all of it. We look at every single one of them. So any feedback you have is super useful. Any topics you want us to cover in the future that you're struggling with or you think would be helpful, please let us know. We're happy to do 101 level workshops, and we're happy to do really advanced ones and go deeper into the weeds. So please put your requests in, let us know, share these with anybody that you think it'll be valuable so we can spread it further. And yeah, please reach out if you need anything. So we really appreciate all your time. Barry, is there anything you want to add?
No, knowledge is power. Share, be happy, ask questions, let us know if we can help you out.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for spending an hour with us. Time is so valuable, and we're very grateful. So, hope to see you all at future sessions. Thanks, everybody.